I haven't been back in DC for about 2 years. I used to come here at least every year, and the last time I was here, I did speak about Indonesia's democracy, which is, I was here in 2015. And it was fresh off, of course, the Jokowi president election, and there was a lot of things that were happening during that election that already troubled us. And for us, it was a step in a way, the challenges that we faced during the 2014 presidential elections were manageable in a way. We knew that this was a development of democracy, that we had identity politics coming up. You had, again, like Lindsay said, cleavages, kind of, the usual tactics of campaigning that you didn't often see, you didn't ever see actually in Indonesia. And we experienced that in 2014 during the presidential elections. And 2015 came, and we were pretty, we managed our expectations as to what Jokowi would be like as a president, and all the divisive politics that happened during the campaign. Slowly, we thought, okay, that will go away a little bit. And then, 2015, running up to 2016, the Jakarta gubernatorial election, and that was actually when it really started. So I look around the room. I see a lot of familiar faces, and many of you I know do. Know Southeast Asia, look at Indonesia, look at Southeast Asia politics. So I won't give a very detailed background, but first of all, the Jakarta elections were important because, it was actually when the Jakarta elections happened during the time Jokowi was running, it was important because actually I was very proud during the Jakarta gubernatorial elections where Jokowi was running. It was actually, I used that as an example where democracy was actually moving forward. We celebrated the fact that, this unknown mayor from a small town got elected as Jakarta governor. He didn't even live in Jakarta. And the fact that he was supported by, he wasn't supported by the political parties that had good infrastructure and all that. So that was also a reason to celebrate. Another reason for celebrating during Jokowi's gubernatorial elections was that it was a turn where we saw even the Golkar as the ruling party, not the ruling party, it was a major party, it was a large party, it was one, again, like I said, with infrastructure, actually lost. They did really badly in the Jakarta gubernatorial elections during the Jokowi elections for that. And so we thought, wow, this is a turnaround. This is for a reason to celebrate for us in a way that, okay, there's a maturing democracy. And that's why we felt Jakarta elections were always important. So when it came time for, Ahok, Basuki Cahayapurnama, his deputy governor, stepped as governor when Jokowi became president, and then it was time for his re-election. This is where we found the trouble. So, first of all, Ahok, as he's known, was the first governor. Well, actually, factually, it's not. He's not the first Christian Chinese governor. There was one before, but again, he was well known already. He was not the usual candidate. He was not the usual leader. He was a bit crass. He was a little bit of everything. He had he had an unorthodox way of governing. And again, it was refreshing because we saw transparency, we saw accountability, we saw actually things changing in Jakarta. As a true Jakartan, I was like celebrating. I didn't care who was governor. I didn't care what race, what religion. And actually that's how a lot of Jakartans felt. That it didn't matter what he was, but we saw a change in Jakarta. But again, for a few people, and these are the people that actually then started to create this understanding that, but we can't let this happen. We can't let a position as big as Jakarta governor be in the hands of a minority, because that means trouble for the majority Muslim population. So this was when the trouble started. So when the campaign started, Even before we knew who he was running against, there were already people trying to discredit Ahok in so many different ways. And this, of course, led up to when the candidates were clear. When the candidates were clear that it was between Basuki Cahayapurnama and Anies Baswedan, people started taking sides. And people started taking sides and creating those divisions more clearly. If you are a true Muslim, you will not vote for a non-Muslim. And they used language that we had not heard of before. To go a little bit back about Indonesia, and again, just a brief background. Indonesia, when it was founded, it was founded as a pluralistic country. Our motto is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity and diversity. And that's something we held dearly. I mean, I grew up for most parts of my life, I grew up in Indonesia, and it was never a problem. We never asked, what religion are you? It was a given thing. So it was the nature of us Indonesians. I had friends, I went to public school. It was, I had friends from different religions, different races, and it was never a problem. And because we were always taught in school that Pancasila was the philosophy, and unity and diversity was above everything else. So you had unity and diversity was the one that really united us. The philosophy and everything united us, and we got it in spades in school. Even when you went to private school, there was always, civic education was about that. So that was never a problem. But when you start having people then calling out others for being not Muslim enough, or even to the extent of calling people kafir or infidels, and openly, as a political strategy, as a political tactic, we found that to be very troubling. Part of us were saying, it's just elections. This happened during Jokowi's campaign. It's fine. It's okay. It'll blow over after the elections. Unfortunately, it went deeper. It went so deep because they used, again, as we felt it was a political tactic, but they also took advantage of some of the people's fear, or some people's feeling of, it's an emotional feeling as well, having of wanting to have unity among Muslims and all of that. It was also utilized as people were trying to, and again, it wasn't uneducated lower class or anything. It was middle class Jakartans who were asked, if you were a true Muslim, you would not vote for a non-Muslim. So these kind of conversations started happening in a lot of places. And what was troubling for us, and when the Habibie Center did a few studies, and we asked around, because we've been doing studies in violent conflict in different provinces, we asked, is the Jakarta elections affecting you in Jogja or in Bandung or in other cities? Unfortunately, the answer was yes. And we realized that this became a problem. We realized that people were using politics for what the political elite seemed to be, this is just a strategy to win. But you see in pockets, in communities, you actually heard people talk about it as something that they really truly believed in. So you had people being very divisive, you had families being divided because, I openly supported Ahok. I openly supported him, not because just of, I supported him because of his performance, of how he led, how he governed Jakarta. But part of me also wanted to support him because I also didn't want Indonesia, or at that time Jakarta, to go down into I wanted to prove that, yes, we accept candidates from all races, we were better than that. I really wanted to accept that. But unfortunately, that's not what happened, and we see the division becoming clearer and clearer. So the tactics that they used, of course, for those of you who read Indonesian news and all that, they used rallies. They called them peace rallies. They called them democratic rallies. It was a peace movement, the 212, the 411. The 411 was 4th of November rally. It was massive. Then they had another one in December, 2nd of December. It was, again, a massive demonstration, and they called them peace demonstrations. They dubbed them peace demonstrations because then they'd get permit from the police, but then they also utilized those demonstrations to also call out for Ahok's blood. You know, that's when I thought, this is getting serious. Violence. Really conservative, hardline Muslims then started embracing some moderate Muslims, then started embracing middle-class, moderate Muslims, families who actually didn't think that Ahok needed to be punished, but then but felt like this was, you know, we needed to be united. So a lot of these tactics were being used. And again, they also did not want Ahok. They tried to use legal means. They wanted him to be charged for blasphemy, all because he reportedly quoted the Quran, and they felt it was wrong. And I'm of the belief that he didn't misquote. He didn't misquote, and it wasn't blasphemy. But then that's another story. But I felt that it was injustice. And again, even when they passed the ruling, it was. But in any case, why does this matter? Why does this break in unity and diversity matter to Indonesia's progress? And why I feel very strongly why, I'm currently pushing so much for unity and diversity to be replanted in the hearts of young minds or young Indonesians. Because I feel if we lose track, if we just say, oh, it's just an election tactic, it's not going to happen. Because they used that tactic and they won in 2016. Next year will be 2 major provincial regional elections. They're going to use the same tactic. And the divisions that are already there, I fear, will become wider and deeper. And then it will be too late for us to go back. And then, and that's just going to be a warm-up for 2019 presidential elections, which is why we're very concerned, which is why, I mean, I speak on this not as an expert on Indonesia or democracy. I speak on this as an Indonesian who's really concerned about what's happening in the world, where we see discussions on race, discussions on identity, discussions on why that now matters. I mean, you're having this discussion here in the United States, and which is why I felt it was also important when Leslie asked me to speak. I said, Leslie, we're facing a lot of the same things. We're facing the discussions on race. We're facing the discussions on identity in the same way, and it's being used in our politics in very much the same way. You just have to, switch the labels a little bit, and you have the different phobias, where here you may have Islamophobia or whatever. In Indonesia, it's the non-Islamic phobia. So it's very concerning, and I think it's something that we need in Indonesia to work at, and that's where the good news usually happens as well. I don't come bearing all bad news. There are forces at work that are trying to push back and trying to ensure that this doesn't go deeper. There are organizations, the oldest and largest Muslim organization in Indonesia, Nahdlatul Ulama, Muhammadiyah, they're at the forefront as well. We're working together. Right now, the Habibie Center, institutions like the Habibie Center, the Wahid Foundation, Ma'arif Institute, with Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama, those who feel that this is going to be getting worse as we see the regional elections coming up, as we see the presidential elections coming up. So some of us are working at the policy level, making sure that it doesn't escalate to violence. That's what we're hoping it doesn't happen. Because again, you have troublemakers in these groups that want to start violence. And also we're working on the grassroots level, working with students, working with young people, reintroducing them of the idea of unity and diversity and the importance of Pancasila, the importance of respecting and actually just looking at we used to be very, and we still are, very proud of the brand of Islam that we practice in Indonesia. I'm a Muslim, I'm a woman, and I'm very proud of it. you know, I wear it proudly on my sleeve, and I always say is like, and I have arguments, I have debates with the Muslim hardliners who can quote different ayats and different verses and say that, you know, I should be put in my place, and like I tell him where to put, you know. I'm polite enough, I won't say it here, you know. So yeah, so it's forces like that. You have women's movements, you have youth movements, you have people pushing back because they see in Indonesia right now that we don't recognize. If you look at Indonesia right now, what you see in the media, sometimes it does reflect what's happening. It's not always, of course, but you see it. In the WhatsApp groups, that often are the cause of the problems itself, but in the groups that, the discussions that people have, you see people still pushing, and again, social media is very strong, and I could go on talking about social media and how that has an impact. But social media is a tool. It's not the problem here. It's who's behind it, how they're using, how they're utilizing. I used to be of the belief that we need to find out who's funding this. We need to find out who's funding these cyber armies. We need to find out who's funding these groups. I've let go of that now, because I think it goes back to now we need to reintroduce that idea that if we want to have a better Indonesia, democracy is a way. And for us to have that democracy, we need to recognize this unity and diversity and embrace it a lot more. And address those issues. Why are people feeling the way they are? Why are people feeling that they can't accept a non-Muslim as a leader? Why they can't accept their non-Muslim? It doesn't just become part of politics, and that's where we see the problem as well. It becomes how people interact in communities. Christmas is coming soon. I can pause with 100% guarantee there's going to be a conversation in Indonesia, and actually not just Indonesia, I heard, about are we allowed to say Merry Christmas? That happens in Indonesia. Oh my goodness. And I put a Merry Christmas on my wall and I'll get a message and it's like, Ima, you're Muslim, you can't say Merry Christmas. I said, says who? But there you go. And again, it's going to be, then the discussion is going to be against, and you see that I can give you examples of what's bubbling right now in Indonesia as to some government, regional or even neighborhood governments starting to come out with regulations on what Christians are allowed and what they're not allowed to do, which we never had before. That's what troubles me, and that's what keeps me up at night. But at the same time, I also can rest assured at night that there are forces bigger than that as well, pushing back. We at the Habibie Center are working on a program called Cerita, which is a storytelling program which basically reaches out to young influencers on embracing inclusivity and trust. And actually that's what we really need right now, is just to build that trust in communities again.